It was postponed for a year because of the pandemic, and today's Olympic Games opening ceremony happens in a city that is currently under a state of emergency. There are mounting fears the 11,000 athletes descending on the Japanese capital could very well end up causing a massive super spreader event. But the flame remains lit and the show is going on. Well, John Matthews is our correspondent in Tokyo, and they're 7 hours ahead of us. He joins us now for the latest. John, konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. Yes, not quite the evening yet. That is correct. How are you?
We're good, thank you. Tell us what it's like being in Tokyo.
Well, it's more or less like any other day, except for the fact that there are police everywhere. The stadium is barricaded off. The opening ceremonies are only a few hours away. There are crowds gathering around the stadium. The sort of Blue Impulse, our equivalent of sort of an air show from the Japan Self-Defense Forces, drew the Olympic rings over the stadium and got quite a crowd for that, actually. They're saying no crowds really are allowed near the stadium, but some are gathering, some to protest the Olympics as well. Of course, the Games are not terribly popular given the public health risk that they've been posing.
I think the New Yorker called the Games today the anger games, saying that a lot of local residents in Tokyo are not happy about it at all.
That's a broad brush to paint, I would say. I think the frustration games is a lot more apt than anger outright. People, I mean, I was here when Tokyo, I mean, I've lived in Japan for quite a long time at this point, and I was here when Tokyo was given the host city bid many years ago, 8 years ago now, I believe, and people were excited. It was a great time. Tokyo was going to be this hub for athleticism and sports. Japan is very proud of its national football team, for example, and the women's football team is doing very well, as a matter of fact, just played a couple of days ago. So there is energy that wanting to support the athletes, but just the way things have gone since the pandemic and postponing it a year, and the IOC very much has been sort of painted with this image that they're pushing it very hard and it's going to happen regardless, and that image fits in some ways. So there is a lot of frustration sort of in how things are going down. At least there aren't spectators, I suppose. Many have said and criticized the idea that they were going to hold events with 10,000 people in the stands when cases are already going to be rising. We are now in a fifth wave, a very serious fifth wave in Tokyo. So very mixed feelings, a lot of frustration.
Part of the fun of going to the Olympic Games, I suppose, is being able to taste the local food and getting a sense of traditions in the area and having a sensory experience. What's it like for people on the streets of Tokyo, our visitors?
Well, visitors, the only visitors coming in at this point are delegates, athletes, and media. So those who are able to come in and experience what those of us locals are able to experience, there's still some of the best food in the world here in Tokyo, and not even just Japanese food. We have a great selection of from all over Asia, Europe, North America, South America as well, Africa. It is a fantastic place to eat. I would put it top 3 in the world for sure. So people are experiencing that, but people are also having to head out by 8 p.m. The state of emergency is calling on restaurants to close by 8 p.m. Bars are being told not to serve alcohol at all. So while those rules, or rather requests, are being flouted this particular time, people are very tired of the restrictions, and bars are starting to go under, so they're staying open against the request. So despite that, there's a bit of a restriction. Despite the availability of great food and drink here, there is still some restrictions, and the mood is a bit dampened for that reason.
Yeah, we're in a similar situation here where restaurants are having to close by 8 o'clock so that staff can get home by 8:30 and there's no alcohol being sold. What about the athletes? Are they allowed to mingle with one another at all? Are they allowed to reach out to different teams from around the world?
We find that they are, despite not being allowed to. The games were sort of a will they, won't they affair for quite a while during this year. I actually had foolishly predicted they wouldn't be happening in 2021. Proved wrong on that one. But the athlete bubble is supposed to keep them sort of eating alone, only staying around their team, being isolated. But we are seeing that they're staying in hotels that are run by, average, ordinary people, and they can't track everyone in the hotel at all times. These protocols do require a lot of work to trace and track and make sure everybody's sort of staying inside the bubble. So we're finding that there are cases where athletes are able to get out, mingle with the public, that kind of thing, delegation members, that kind of thing as well. So it's not quite as restrictive as you might think it's supposed to be, but there are breaches here and there.
Okay, so it sounds like our athletes can have a little bit of fun as long as they're safe, and I suppose they adhere to COVID responsible rules. Thank you so much. Arigato to John Matthews, our Tokyo correspondent. Did you see how I managed to Google those two little phrases quickly?
No, very impressive.
Like
very
quickly,
impressive.
Just like hello in Japanese, thank you in Japanese.
I'm glad though that you're saying that the athletes do get to sort of to mingle a little bit. I remember speaking to the former South African hockey goalkeeper Sanani Mangisa, and she was saying that being in the athletes' village is amazing, and she was describing sitting across the table from NBA basketball players who she had idolized and she thought were absolute heroes.